Hello? Yeah, there we go. That's working. Okay. Okay, so, hello everyone. Welcome to my release day question and answer live stream. I'm so excited. I'm going to be answering you guys' questions. I have them here on the phone or on my phone about my book. And I'll also be answering whatever questions, you guys have for me here in the chat. So, welcome everyone. I am so excited to be here with you guys. So, let me check the chat real quick. I've never done one of these, so this is going to be a fun new experience. So, let me check the chat. It's writing for Jesus here. How exciting! I'm so glad you got my book. I was really hoping that it would arrive right at the right time. On release day, I was so worried, wasn't going to time right, but I'm really glad that it came at just the right time for you. So, Writing for Jesus asks, which self-publishing company did you use? So I actually used two different self-publishing companies to self-publish my book. I use KDP or Kindle Direct Publishing for Amazon. Kindle Direct Publishing is Amazon's self-publishing platform, and by going through KDP, I was able to have that program supply the paperbacks to Amazon, and it also set up the Kindle ebooks once I uploaded my file. So that took care of Amazon. I also used Ingram Spark, and Ingram Spark is a platform that can supply Amazon, but I chose to use that just for my own books, and also if I ever have any distributors who want to purchase my book, that's where I'll send them to buy their books. But currently I'm just using Ingram Spark to get my author copies, and really the main reason that I decided to have Amazon supply Amazon was because the royalty rates are better with KDP than with Ingram Spark, so it just made sense to have Amazon supply itself, for lack of a better way of saying it, and just use Ingram Spark to get my copies because it was a little bit easier that way. So let me just check the chat again. So I think now I will start working on answering some of the questions that you guys sent me in my Instagram. I asked for you guys to send me what questions you had so that I could answer those as well on this live stream, in addition to the questions that you guys have for me live in the chat. So let me find those questions in my Instagram. While I'm waiting for this to load, it might be a good time to just say thank you so much to everyone for how much amazing support you guys have shown me, not just today, but throughout the whole week, but especially today. I thought for sure my book trailer was just gonna absolutely flop. I didn't think that it was going to get nearly as many views as it has, and so I'm really blessed, and I'm really grateful to the Lord and to you guys that today and the book trailer has gone so smoothly. That really makes me happy. So, loaded. Let me see. Okay, so let's see how many questions I got here. Hold on. It's loading. Alrighty, here we go. So there's 2, 4, 6, 8. There's quite a few questions. There's more than 8 questions, but let's go ahead and get started. So, what character did you find the most difficult to write and why? I'm gonna be honest, I did not pre-plan my answers to these questions, so I may have to pause and consider the answer sometimes. I've been working on this book for so stinking long that at this point it's hard for me to remember which characters were hard to write because I know them really well. When I've gone to, work on, creating other parts of the series, or, when I was just working on adding scenes in the editing process, by the time I was at those last stages of working on this book, I just knew them so well. Their personalities just came really easily. So I don't know that at this point I can honestly remember exactly which character was the hardest to write, because I know them so well. So I don't really have an answer for that question. Sorry. When did you start it and how long did it take you to draft? So I started it in summer of 2017 and it took me about 6 months to draft. I want to say I was done with the first draft sometime between December and February of, December 2017 and then February 2018. So I want to say it took me about 6 months to draft. But as you know, since 2017 was a very long time ago at this point, it took me a long time to do the rest of the process. So even though writing it didn't take that long, it took me a while to do everything else. So I'm going to check the chat real quick. Very cool. Very, very cool. Yeah, I've never heard of, I'm probably going to butcher the name, Stubenpress? Stubenpress? I hope I got that pronunciation right. I've never heard of that, but I'll have to look into that. That sounds really interesting. And congratulations that you are hoping to publish a book someday. That is really exciting. So do I see myself as Ruth? So I actually got this question a couple of times. So a different version of this question I got on my Instagram was, what inspired Ruth's personality? Is she a lot like you or someone else you know? So I think I talked about this in the first release week video, the story behind the story video, about how I actually set out to have Ruth be very, very different than me. I set out to have Ruth be like a tomboy, and I'm not a tomboy. Like, I pictured her very different than me. Like, I don't even know how to describe it, but I pictured her very, very different than me. But the more that I wrote her, and the more that I kind of tried to picture myself in her shoes, she really became a lot like me. She is more the mid-high school me, in that I feel like I have, I mean, one would hope in, several years' time, I've matured quite a bit since then, so I do carry myself a little bit differently, I feel like, than she does, but she's very much representative of, like, me when I was, like, 15, 16, maybe even 17-ish. Like, she's very much kind of how I was at that age as far as her mannerisms, how she carries herself, things like that. So, yes, I wouldn't say she's as much me now, but she definitely reminds me a lot of how I was then, if that makes any sense. But I didn't set out to have it be that way. It's just, as I got into her head and wrote her, she became basically me at that age. So there's that question. So I will go back to the Instagram questions real quick. So why do you write historical fiction? That is a really good question. I actually did not start out writing historical fiction in the early days of my writing. Whenever I was first writing like stories that had an actual plot, I was writing allegories, and I was writing fairy tale short stories, original fairy tale short stories. I did actually experiment in my early days with fairy tale retellings, and that's something that I'd like to get back to. I think that doing some fairy tale retellings could be a lot of fun, but historical fiction has always been something that I wanted to do, but it's not really something that I really truly explored properly, if you want to call it that, until Free. I had experimented with writing historical fiction throughout my middle school and early high school days, but it wasn't really until Free that I really learned the process of writing historical fiction. And as you might have guessed or imagined, I also did a video on that. I did a video specifically about how I researched historical fiction. I have a link in the description of this live stream to the playlist that has all of my different videos about Free that I have released up until this point. So whenever you're done watching this, if you'd like to go watch some of my other videos about the process, that link will be down in the description, so you can go check them out and have them all in one place. I love it when people do playlists, because sometimes hunting for videos on YouTube can really be a pain, so playlists really make life easy. So as far as like why I chose historical fiction, though, that really comes down to why I wrote it in the first place and what inspired me to write it. I went into more detail in that first video for release week, but I was inspired to write Free originally based on a really cool musical that I saw about the story of Jonah. Now, Free is not the story of Jonah, it's not a retelling of the story of Jonah, but the idea of like this this seafaring adventure with really strong biblical themes, and it was really cool. You know, the sailors had this like sea shanty thing that they were singing as they were setting off to sea, and it was so cool and adventurous that I I just love to imagine myself in that world. And because the story that inspired my story, if you want to call it that, was, technically historical, I mean, it was historical, it was a Bible story, that's, a historical setting. I wanted my story to be historical as well. That made sense, and I knew I didn't want it to take place in modern times. That wouldn't really work. As far as which time period I chose, that was pretty complicated, and so I think I will leave that to the historical fiction video as far as like answering that question. So yeah, I'm kind of enjoying like swapping back and forth between Instagram questions and the YouTube chat questions. So I'm going to check the YouTube chat questions again. So, have you been on a cruise? Have you been on a cruise before? Did you go on the water for research? I wish I could say that I did. I did not. I have been in a boat a couple of times in my life, but I have not been on like a square rig or anything like that. I actually think it would be absolutely epic to go like to the East Coast where I think they have like a reproduction of the Mayflower or whatever, and like be able to like experience that, like get on like a real reproduction square rigger. I think that would be absolutely amazing, but no, I was not able to have that as part of my research experience. I did my research from the vantage point of the land. I didn't get to experience any of it at sea, but that would be really cool to be able to experience that on a real square rigger. I think that would be really, really cool. So, where do you draw your inspiration from when coming up with novel ideas? So this, I guess, is a more general writing question. Most of the time in the last few years, I would say my inspiration, like for free, has come from like musicals or movies or whatever. I tend to get inspired by like bits of movies I see, whether that's, in the case of Free, a seafaring adventure with biblical themes, or I've had movies where, the fact that it was set in like a cool adventurous jungle, that inspired me to write a story, or sometimes even just one scene will inspire me to write a story. But I am also inspired by other things. Sometimes historical accounts give me inspiration. I think I mentioned that in one of my recent videos about kind of wanting to see what you guys thought maybe I should write next. And I get inspired by a lot of things. I have been inspired lately by the idea of trying to do some retellings of classic stories like fairy tales and stuff like that. But I'm kind of one of those people, maybe this is just a normal creative thing, that I'm kind of inspired by a little bit of everything. It can just be a random idea or, one scene in something, and it'll send me off on this imaginary adventure, and that will turn into the next story that I write. So, yeah, I am inspired by a lot of different things. So, did you have to do lots of research to write Life on a Ship? Yes. Yes, I did. And yeah, it was also difficult because not all sources agree on certain details. So one of the tricky things about historical research is trying to figure out which sources know what they're talking about and which they don't. But in short, yes, I did have to do a lot of research about what it was like to live on a ship. So yeah. What do you want to linger with the reader long after they finish the book? This is a really good question. So, I want the reader to feel really inspired. Like, that might sound kind of boring, but like, there have been times where I've read a really good book and you just get this happy, excited feeling. But I want it to be not just a happy, excited because the book was good, but also because you were inspired in your faith and you were reminded of the truth of freedom in Jesus, and it's such a deep thing. Like, it's hard to put it into words, but I really do want my readers to just be inspired by the truth that I hope to communicate through this book, and to have it go with them in their lives, and they can live with more joy and more freedom because of what they've been reminded of in my book. Like, I don't know, like that's just what I want. I want people to be inspired, and I want people to be inspired by how close Jesus is to them. Like, that's honestly big chunk of why I wrote the book in the first place, is as I want to give people that. I want to give people that with all my writing, but of course the freedom aspect of it is particularly important to this project. So let me check the YouTube chat again. Do you see your book as a movie? Also, there's a few different questions. Do you see your book as a movie? What's your favorite book? Favorite author? By the way, thank you for your answers. Well, you're welcome. Thank you for your questions. I love getting to answer these questions. It's a lot of fun. So, do I see my book as a movie? In the early days of me writing it, yes. Now, it's not that it couldn't be a movie. I just don't know that it would necessarily be the right kind of material for a movie. Something that I've learned as I have explored and dabbled in filmmaking and screenwriting is that some stories are better suited to novels than movies, and some stories are better suited to stage productions than movies or novels, and it doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with the story. It's just that, for example, if you have a story that has a lot of thinking going on, that might be hard to turn into a movie. And I definitely feel like there's a lot of thinking going on in Free. I think it could be a good movie. I think it could be really cool. I just don't think it's the kind of story that you would normally expect to see made into a movie, but maybe it is, because it does have a fair amount of adventure in it, so I think it could. I don't know. I think it could be cool made into a movie, but I don't daydream about it being made into a movie as much as I used to in my earlier days of writing it. I think I actually used to picture it as a stage musical because I was, I love stage musicals, obviously. And that would be cool. But yeah, I think it'd be really awesome, but I don't daydream about it as much as I used to. So what is my favorite book? I don't know that I can answer that question. I mean, I have some favorite authors. I love Priscilla Shirer. I have been doing one of her Bible studies. I'm actually almost done with it. I've read a couple of her books. I really enjoy them. I love Amanda Tarot's fiction. I'm currently getting into Jane Austen. I've read Pride and Prejudice, and I am almost done with Persuasion, and I'm really enjoying that. And probably the author that I grew up reading the most would be Sarah Maxwell and the Moody Family series, and she also has a new series out that I'm still reading. I'm still keeping up with. I don't care if it's middle grader or whatever. I want to read the books. I love her. She's one of my favorite authors. So I don't have a favorite book, but I definitely have some favorite authors. So we'll answer the last of these questions. Oh, favorite author. So I already answered that. Yeah, sorry, I can't answer the favorite book question. The Bible. I get that. That would be my favorite book, the Bible. If I can only have one book in life, definitely would be the Bible. But yeah, that's a very hard question to answer. So, did you think Free would be your first book, or did you have another book idea in mind first? Yes. So I've written literally dozens of stories in my life, and I think that the first story that I had my heart set on publishing, well, I don't know, because there were more than one. But I did have multiple times where I was like, okay, I want to publish this book. And keep in mind, this started back when I was 12. So I had, quite a few story ideas, and some of them were pretty good stories. But looking back, I see that I wasn't ready to publish. I wasn't ready to self-publish until Free. And I wasn't ready to actually self-publish Free until now, several years later. So I did have other ideas for what I wanted to publish first, but I really feel like it's the Lord's hand and the Lord's doing that this is my first book, and I see how this is a positive thing that I waited until this story to publish it. Not that the other stories were bad, I just really feel grateful for his timing, even though perhaps to some degree I'm not completely sure why. But yeah, I did have other story ideas that I had been thinking of publishing before Free, but Free is the first book that I did end up publishing. And I realized pretty quickly that this was a book that I thought was going to be the one to kickstart my self-publishing career, if you want to call it that. So, what was the hardest chapter to write in Free? And this is where I realize I need to go either get my binder that has the original drafts, or I thought I had a copy of it over here of Free, but I guess I must have put it somewhere else. So I will go grab a copy of Free so I can find exactly which chapter I'm thinking of. Set it over here. I knew it couldn't have gone far. I was like, I'm going to bring it over here so that I will have it to reference, and then inevitably I walked off with it. Okie dokes. So, let me just tweak something here. I think I need to adjust my resolution real quick. This is my first time live streaming, so well, I guess I can't really tweak resolution where I am right now. So, oh well. So, let me find which chapter was the hardest to write. Check that everything's going well. So, it keeps telling me something about like my keyframe frequency, but I guess I'm just gonna ignore that for now. If for some reason like the resolution is like really bad and or you can't hear me, do let me know in the chat. If that were to happen, please do let me know. Don't just like sit there and be like, well, I guess I'm gonna leave. I can't hear her. You know, I would want to know. But I think we're good for now. So let me find the chapter. I have no idea what I'm saying. I think, yeah, this is what I thought. Chapter 7. Chapter 7 was the hardest to write. Not necessarily as much the writing part, because, like I feel like I alluded to, I can't really remember when I first wrote Free. But Chapter 7 was the hardest to write because we had to do a lot of tweaking. We had to make sure that the subtleties of the scene were right, that things were coming across the right way. So Chapter 7 definitely comes to mind as the chapter that was hardest to write. So, another question here on the YouTube chat. Did you feel the Lord's presence while writing certain scenes? Yes, absolutely. And that's part of what I feel like was so special about this process, and part of why I would get so excited to put this book out there. Because there were definitely scenes where like I just felt so excited, like, you know, about what the Lord was doing with the story, what the Lord was doing, you know, with the characters' lives in the story. So yes, I definitely felt the Lord's presence when I was writing certain scenes, and that was really a blessing. It also serves as a great encouragement that, you know, to keep going, you know, to keep doing what you're doing because, you know, you feel the Lord's presence there with you. We all need that encouragement and that reminder from time to time, you know. So, it's fine, clearly. Oh, good. I'm glad you can hear and that it's clear. That rhymes. I did not mean for that to rhyme. And hey, thank you so much for asking these questions. I'm really enjoying having all these different questions to answer. So you are totally fine. I love that you're asking all these questions. I really appreciate it. I honestly, a large reason of why I had all these Instagram questions done is because I knew I probably didn't have enough following to get a whole lot of people to my YouTube live stream. So I had some questions prepared in case nobody was able to make it, but I'm really grateful that you know, those of you guys that are watching were able to make it, and I'm really grateful for you guys being here, whether you're asking questions or not. But also thank you if you are asking questions, because that's a lot of fun. It's fun for me to be able to like interact live with you guys. Like, that's cool. I've never been able to do that before. Well, I guess I did do some live writing sprints on Instagram over during NaNoWriMo, but that's a little bit different. Okay. What sparked the idea? Which character came to you first? Which character is easiest to write? So Ruth definitely was the character that came to me first, and I feel like I answered the first question, you know, what sparked the idea already, and I did go more into detail on that in the first video for release week, so I think I'm just going to move from that question, because the which character was easiest to write kind of is the same line of which character is hardest to write, and that I don't really remember. Although I do feel like, no, I don't know. I don't know which characters was easiest to write because I don't remember, so oops. But, alrighty. Why did you choose the setting of the seas and life on a ship? So that goes back to the fact that this was inspired by that seafaring, biblical Jonah musical, and they were on a ship for part of that, obviously, because, the story with the storm and the sailors and things like that. So that's why I chose the setting of the seas and life on a ship. Plus, it's just cool. Like, ever since then, I've fallen in love with, like, ships and sailing and seafaring stuff and stuff like that. Let me just adjust my camera. So, yeah, that's why I chose it. It just was that way from the beginning. So, do you write on a schedule or just whenever inspiration strikes? So, both to some degree. I currently have not been writing very much just because I've been so busy with releasing Free. Now I have a book to hold up for the video. I've been so busy releasing Free that I just have not had dedicated time to sit down and write, and I knew that it would be wise to wait to start a new series or a new project until I had just a little bit more time to dedicate to it. But I used to literally only write whenever inspiration strikes, and that made me tend to get stuck a lot, especially because I had a lot of different projects going at once. So I kind of didn't get anywhere fast with any of my projects, but I recently discovered that I really like to have a deadline. So while I might not have a writing schedule like during NaNoWriMo, I find NaNoWriMo itself to be very helpful because there's no schedule, but there is the deadline, which almost serves as a schedule in the sense of you need to have this much done by this time. So there's that. So yeah, a little bit of both. I try not to force myself to write, but whenever I know I have a deadline, I tend to actively be working on the story in my head more often, I feel like, if that makes any sense. And so that makes me able to write more often and not just wait for inspiration to strike. The other thing is that I use an outline system, and that helps me a lot because there are places in the story where you're never going to have inspiration strike. You just got to get through it because they're the harder to write parts of the story, and it feels like they're taking forever. Even if, they're structured fine and it's not boring to the reader, there's just parts in the story that are boring to write. So, in that sense, I can't wait for inspiration to come. I use my outline, and my outline is really helpful for me for getting through that. So, I don't know if that really answered the question, but let me check on the chat here in the comments. I think we have somebody new commenting. That makes me excited. So let's see. What was the hardest thing about writing or publishing? Hi Heather. Hi AJ Pruitt. So good to see you here. The hardest thing about writing or publishing, I guess, like in general or a specific thing. If I had to pick a specific thing about what was hardest about publishing this book, I would say it would probably be cover design, and not necessarily the cover design in and of itself, but getting it uploaded to KDP and Ingram Spark and getting the cover design to fit the parameters and the dimensions and make sure that there was no white space and that the trim size was good and everything. That was the hard part. I got really stressed, during the time where I was trying to get this uploaded and it wasn't working. And I actually had a friend on Instagram who helped me get it figured out, who's done this before, and I was really, really grateful for that because I was just at my wit's end trying to figure out how to get this stuff done. So, yeah, the cover design and more the cover upload process than the cover design process. But yeah, the cover uploading, that was probably the hardest part about the whole publishing process, or at least the most stressful part of the publishing process. So I'm gonna catch up on this YouTube chat. There's another question down here. Did you ever feel like giving up? Who besides the Lord encouraged you the most to keep writing? So again, I feel like this applies a little bit more to the editing phase than to the writing phase, because the writing phase in the grand scheme of things didn't take me that long. I would definitely say my mom is one of the biggest encouragements to me in pretty much, everything. But my mom, my family, my brother, my dad too, of course, they all were really encouraging, and my mom also was encouraging in the sense that she was helping me edit it, so I wasn't alone in the editing process. And I'm going to talk more about my self-editing process, I think, in tomorrow's video, but she did help me edit the book. She honestly did probably about the same amount of editing I did, which was a ton. She did a ton of editing for me. And so I would say besides the Lord, my mom probably was the one who encouraged me the most during the process of writing Free. And I would actually also say my brother encouraged me a lot because I used to keep all my stories like a total secret until the first draft was done. And so I was like hiding the story from him for like over a year. And so he was always like, when do I get to know about your story? When do I at least get to know the character names? When do I get to know anything? And so that was encouraging, even though you might think it sounds like it would be annoying. Because it's my brother, it was actually encouraging because I knew he was going to be excited, and I knew he was excited to see the story and to read the story whenever actually I'd get it done. And of course, he ended up really liking the story and whatnot. But yeah, they really encouraged me. I definitely felt like giving up in the editing process. The editing process took so long. Like, it was my first time doing any like serious editing. I'd done proofreading before, but as far as editing, that was my first time, and it felt like it was never going to be done. Like, the book was never going to be good enough. And so I would definitely say the editing process was when I most felt like I was ready to give up. Yes, the technical stuff is insane sometimes. So we have 2, 4, 6, 8. We still have quite a few questions in my Instagram chat, and I'm not completely sure we'll get through all of them, but I'll get through however many I get through. I'm expecting this live stream to end up being about an hour, and we're about half an hour in, so I think we can get through the rest of these in an hour. And, you know, whatever comments you guys have in the YouTube. I would rather answer all of the comments here and just use this for backup, because honestly, that's what this was. This is really just backup in case I didn't get any questions on YouTube, so I would have a bunch of questions. And thank you if anyone who asked me questions here is watching. Thank you for your questions. I really appreciate it, and I'm really enjoying having this to pull from throughout the video. So my mom helps me too with reading, editing, and being my sounding board. Yeah, awesome. Yes, there is nothing like having a close person in your life to do kind of the idea bouncing off of. Like, my brother is my idea bouncer offer, if you want to call it that. Like, everyone listens to me just ramble about my stories from time to time, but my brother does it the most. And the other cool thing, of course, is that I listen to him talk a lot about, like, the things that he's working on. Like, he's more into music than I am. He records his own music. And so there's that. So we kind of bounce ideas off of each other. And then my mom is the one that I would read the story to. And she would be, like, telling me what she liked and whatnot. And she's also the one who, in the best possible way, is the most likely to give me the is tough love the word? Like, to tell me the stuff that really just doesn't work and needs to be tweaked, even though she knows that I thought it worked and maybe it worked in how I thought it read. There were a couple of things in Free that just did not work culturally or came off as flirtatious or inappropriate just because of the historical setting. In fact, the whole way Ruth got on the ship was originally an entirely different way. It wasn't like super inappropriate or anything, of course, but it just didn't work, and the connotation of it was something different than I wanted the story to have, and to me it just read like it read. It didn't seem like it had, like, you know, super negative connotation or whatever, but the vibe, for lack of a better word, my mom helped me see of how I originally set up the story, just even though she knew that I was thinking it just went along with the vibe of the rest of the story, the vibe just didn't really go. Like, you know, it wasn't some obscene thing, it wasn't super inappropriate or something. It just didn't work. It just didn't go. And it's probably not what my audience would have expected either, which, you know, you do want to surprise your readers, but you also don't want to throw your target audience off, if you know what I mean. I hope that made at least a little bit of sense. But yes, I love that I can trust my mom to tell me when something's wrong, but at the same time, like, she does it in a very loving way, and a way that, like, I'm not going to be, like, hurt by it, you know. It's just like, hey, yeah, you might want to fix this. It doesn't really work. It kind of comes off in the wrong way, so you might want to fix it. And then I can think about it, and most of the time I'm like, yeah, I think you're right. I do think we need to fix this. So yeah, lots of love to my mom. Sending lots of love to my mom for helping me with all that. So, what is your writing drink and or snack? Water, I'm not a coffee person, not a tea person, occasionally a lemonade person, but I just like water. My favorite snack, I eat a lot of Lair bars. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're like kind of a, not really energy bar, but like a granola bar kind of a thing. I eat those a lot. A lot of protein. I like to eat a lot of protein. Where did you get the idea for your story? I think I talked about that already in this video, so I'm just going to move on from that question. What authors have inspired you? I mentioned her earlier, but Sarah Maxwell was definitely one of my biggest inspirations as a kid learning to write. She was definitely probably my biggest author inspiration outside of course, scripture. Scripture inspired me, and it still inspires me a lot. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm inspired anytime I read a really good story, but Sarah Maxwell had the biggest influence on my writing for sure. Is this the first book you've written? Oh, gosh, no. Gosh, no. I have, literally, downstairs, we have a tote. We have 2 baskets, I think. I can't remember if it's 1 or 2. That's fair enough. My brother and I, both of our collections of stories we wrote as kids, but they're like this big, like pretty big sized totes, and they are baskets, and they are full of our story ideas. And not story ideas, like the stories we wrote as kids. And they were totally random things a lot of times. I was writing stories from probably age 6 to age 11-ish, where it was things like, oh, there's this family of monkeys and they live in a treehouse, and I called them the Peelers. And I think that's an actual last name too. And their adventures living in this treehouse, and them living their what would pretty much be like a normal human life, except they're monkeys, but they're shopping at Aldi and things like that. Yeah, I wrote a ton of stories, and I also went through a phase in early high school, middle school, where I was trying to write novels but didn't really know how, so I had a lot of story ideas that I started and never finished. And then I also have a whole variety of short stories that I've written that quite a bit of are finished, actually. And so, yes, I have written literally dozens of stories, so this is not the first story that I've written. But it's the first book that I published. Main inspiration. That's pretty vague. I mean, like I said earlier, I'm inspired by lots of different things, so... Yes, we definitely need honesty. Did you have any beta readers? So I guess it depends by how you define beta readers. I'm inclined to say yes. I did not ask for beta readers on social media and things like that. I feel like that's the normal way to get beta readers. I got feedback from some friends and family that I asked if they would read my book, and they read it. And at that point, I mentioned this, I think, in the video that's coming out tomorrow. At that point, we had edited Free so much that there really wasn't that much left to critique. And so, honestly, at that point, the feedback that I got back was pretty clear. I didn't really get criticism type feedback at that point, because we'd been working on editing it literally for a year, I think over a year, maybe more than that. And so, this was back in, I think, I want to say it was the spring, not this, about a year ago-ish, I was starting to let people read the book. Yeah, it would have been about a year ago. And so at that point, I'd already been working on Free for 3 years, and only 6 months of that had actually been writing it. So we'd been editing it for a long time. Editing? We'd been editing it for a long time. So in a way, yes, I had beta readers, but in a way, no, because they didn't really... At that point, it was more similar to an ARC reader or an advanced reader copy reader, because there really wasn't that much left to edit or tweak at that point for the beta readers to criticize, if you know what I mean. So, favorite character to write. So, this is a little different from the which character is the hardest or easiest. Favorite character to write. It depends on my mood, honestly. I'm not gonna lie, I have a stinking soft spot for Leonard. Even though he's really grumpy and he's kind of mean sometimes, he's fun to write, especially now that I am working on trying to get the rest of the series figured out. Which is actually the next question. Is it a standalone or will there be a sequel? There will be a sequel. This is the series, Hope on the High Seas. This is book 1. I am not completely sure of how many books there will be in the series yet. I don't know, but there will be a sequel, Lord willing. And I'm not ready to really announce anything more than that, but there will be a sequel, Lord willing. And whenever it comes to, now when I'm working with the characters, my favorite character from the first book to write is probably Leonard, maybe Captain Edward. It depends on which scene I'm writing, which mood I'm in. I love Leonard and Captain Edward. Ruth is just me, so she doesn't really count. I mean, she's not exactly me, we talked about that earlier. But, Captain Edward and Leonard, I love both of them. Honestly, it's like picking a child. I love all of them. Even the grumpy ones. Do you have the layout for the next books in the series? So I guess I'm not really sure what you mean by that. Like, do you mean, do I know what's going to happen in the next books? Because I have a sort of plan. I don't want to give too much away. But I do have a plan for the next book, definitely. I guess since you've watched this far into the video, I might as well tell you. I do have the second book drafted at the moment. But it's going to be at least a year before I have that ready. It's not yet been edited at all, and I'm hoping to not have the editing process take anywhere near as long as it did for free, but yes, I do have plans for the series. I don't know how long it will be, but I am working on the plans for the sequel, but again, this isn't like an announcement. I don't know when the sequel is coming out, but yes, I do plan to have there be a sequel, and I am working toward that goal. Favorite chapter. I can't pick a favorite chapter. Oh man, I love it. I love the whole thing. I love it. I don't know. It depends on the day. I don't think I can pick a favorite chapter. Sorry. Hardest part to write. I feel like I answered that question already. Did I answer that question already? But I think we talked about which chapter was the hardest. I think we said chapter 7, so that was pretty hard to write. Favorite part to write. I don't know how I can say this without giving it away. I guess I'll just put it this way. The parts where Ruth is, sharing her faith with the sailors, especially in the later parts of the book. So that's what I'm going to say. Those of you that have read the book and the later chapters, when Ruth's sharing her faith with the sailors, yeah. Those are some of my favorite parts. I also love the relationship between Ruth and Captain Edward. That, as I am working on the next book in the series, is also something I've enjoyed working on. But, yeah, I like that. What about this book are you most proud of? I think the thing that I'm most proud of is how much it has matured me in my writing, my design, my cover design, my formatting, and also my faith and my walk with the Lord. I actually was planning to release this book last year, but I decided to wait, and I really feel like that was the Lord's doing, because I know now I was not ready. I was not ready to release this book last year, mentally, emotionally. I just wasn't ready. I hadn't matured quite enough to be ready to take on what was a very large undertaking. So I feel like the thing I'm most proud of is just how much it's matured me as a person, and as a writer too. So, will the sequel be one that could be a standalone, or is it a continuation? So, both. In my current way of thinking, the way I'm currently looking at the story. So, the whole series is about Ruth and her life. But because they are about her life, each book kind of, in my plan, is for each book to represent kind of a different section of her life, for lack of a better word. It's not like it's going to be like Ruth young, Ruth middle-aged, Ruth old, like not that kind of a section, but like each book is kind of an embodiment of a different set of events that are taking place in her life. So even though it's a continuation of her story, I think that you could probably pick up the second book with how I'm envisioning it right now, and you wouldn't be too taken out of the story for not having read the first book. But then again, I don't know. I haven't had anyone read what I've come up with for the second book yet, so currently I'm thinking it would be kind of a continuation of her life that you could read as a standalone, but I don't know. I haven't gotten anyone else's opinions on that yet. So, what is one thing you hope your readers take away from the story? I think I answered that already, so I'll move on. Given the opportunity, would you ever let it be adapted into a movie? If I felt like the company was going to do a good job and that they were going to be true to the story and not, like, I feel like when people adapt books into movies, sometimes they take things out, and for some reason, like, I feel like some people might, like, want to tone down the faith message a little bit or something like that. I don't know. Why am I thinking that? That's kind of thinking the worst of people. Sorry. But as long as I knew that they were going to be true to the story and that they were going to do a good job, I would definitely consider it. But I would definitely be doing my research on the company, because that is a big thing, you know, and like I'm talking about this like it would actually happen, but you know, hey, nothing's too hard for the Lord, but that's probably not realistic, but I would consider it if I felt like it was going to be done well. We're almost at the end of the questions. So, do you have a playlist or any songs that go with your book? Yes, there are 2 answers to that question. I actually have a playlist for free, and I keep meaning to link to it in my link tree on my Instagram. It's a Spotify playlist, and oh man, I just caught a glimpse of the next question, and I'm like, yes, but, what was the question I was answering? Yes, I do have a playlist for free. I have a Spotify playlist, but I need a link to it in my Instagram, so after this video is done, I think I'm going to go do that. But I also have a surprise that is coming out, I believe, on Tuesday here on YouTube. And so stay tuned for that surprise, because that has to do with this question, but I want it to be a secret, so you'll have to wait until Tuesday. So, I gotta answer this question. Have you ever received negative feedback on your writing and you were like, crying emoji? Yes, it has been an emotional roller coaster to get feedback on my book. Like I said, the feedback that I was getting at the kind of the sort of beta reader stage of my book was all positive feedback. I think one person did make some suggestions on a couple like little things, but when I started getting reviews and feedback in that sense for free, that was really hard. I got a couple of reviews that took me by surprise, and I'm not saying that constructive criticism is bad in book reviews. I want people to be honest, and I want to get feedback so I can be aware of what people, or what things I might want to just tweak a little bit in my writing or my writing style in the future, but I have gotten some feedback that was a little bit difficult to swallow, some of which I was not really prepared for, so yes, there have been times where I've been like, man, I did not expect anyone to say that about my book. Yes, there have been some times where it was a little bit emotional getting the feedback. Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Yeah, prayer is so important, and it's something that I'm trying to work on, like, getting better about and praying more, and, you know, praying for you guys when, you know, you have prayer requests for me on Instagram and some of the groups that I'm in and whatnot. So thank you. I really appreciate that. And I'm excited that you're excited to read it. That's wonderful. So yeah, thank you for your prayers and for being excited to read it. So we have 2 questions left here, which I think is about perfect because YouTube says I've been going for 50 minutes. So this will be like perfect. This will be almost exactly an hour. This will be awesome. So, are you self-publishing? If so, could you explain the process? Yes, I'm self-publishing. Explaining the whole process is not really something I can do in one video, but I have been vlogging throughout this process, and the February vlog unfortunately has not come out yet. I've been too busy getting the videos for this week ready, but I'm hoping later this month to publish my February vlog, and my January vlog had me talking about my self-publishing process, the beginning parts of it, because I did announce that I was publishing a book on January the 1st. So I talked a little bit about, whether I chose KDP or Ingram Spark earlier in this video. If you, watch my videos about how I publish my book and my vlogs, and, you want to know some more about a specific part of it, just let me know in the comments, because I think that'd be really cool to make a video about. And if any of you guys, want me to make a video comparing my experience with KDP and Ingram Spark, and specifically why I chose each of them for what I did, and which one I like the quality of better, let me know, so that I can maybe add that to my list of video ideas. So, last Instagram question, and if any of you guys have any more questions for me, please do be putting those over in the chat, because I'm probably going to be wrapping it up here in a few minutes. So I want to make sure that I get everybody's questions answered. So go ahead and flood my chat bar now with comments if you like, and questions and whatnot. So who's your favorite character, and what is it you like about them? So I think I answered this question earlier. I don't know. Maybe instead what I'll do is I'll list what I particularly like about each of kind of the central characters. So Leonard, this is going to be hard to do without spoiling parts of the story. Leonard, I love that he is kind of one of those characters that puts up this really tough shell and is kind of he is a bully sometimes, but at the same time, he has layers. He has, human emotions, too. You don't see him very often, but he's one of those characters that, if you get to know him a little better, you'll see he's not all that tough stuff. He's that tough, I feel like tough, is tough stuff a saying? I think it is. I don't know. I think I just used that phrase wrong. But anyway, he's not just, tough and brute-like and mean. He's also a real person, and so that's part of what I really love about him. Captain Edward, yeah, I just melt for Captain Edward. I love Captain Edward, and he's not a romantic figure, just to clarify, because, I feel like, funny story, actually, I cannot believe this has not come up in any of my videos, so if you're watching this story is, your reward for watching till the end. My mom actually went through the whole book thinking that Captain Edward was a romantic figure. And at the end, she was like, oh, wait, he's not? And I was like, no, did I not clarify that? So we specifically added a couple of parts when you first meet Captain Edward to clarify that, he's more of a, father figure age. He's not of an age, in this time period in history, he probably would be, but this is not intended to be a historical figure. This is not intended to be a romantic figure. This is potentially going to be more of a father figure type of character. So yeah, that was funny, and I actually had one person read this story, when my grandma read the story, she actually missed that part. I don't know how she missed it, but, so she got to the end and she was like, so I expected it to be a romance story, and it's not. And I was like, well, did you read the part where it specifically says that Captain Edward is, her father's age? And she was like, oh, I guess I missed that part. So I was like, oops. I was like, at least I knew she missed that. It wasn't just I didn't write it right. But, I guess sometimes I know I have missed stuff when I'm reading books, so, no shame at all. It's just oops, I guess we missed that. But yeah, that was funny. That was hilarious. More the part with my mom reading it, because, there wasn't really anything in there until, when the book was almost over, to clarify that, hey, this is a father figure type of person. This is not a romantic figure. And I wonder if I should do an entire video on this. It would be totally random and probably something only you guys would be interested in. YouTube would probably not like it in the algorithm, but hey, who cares? Because it's so entertaining for me to look back and see how much trouble I went to try to make sure that it was clear that Captain Edward's not a romantic figure, because, it would confuse the reader if it looked like he was. So, yeah. So I'm going to answer. There's a couple more questions over here. I would love to see a making of the trailer video. So I actually thought that would be really cool. It would probably be fairly long, because I actually have more than one version of the trailer, and I've saved them because I thought I might like to make a video. So that's something that I think would be really cool to do in the future. Maybe in like the next month or two, once this stuff is kind of winded down. But yeah, I'm glad to know that you're interested in that because I thought that could be a really fun video. So maybe at some point, if I gather up the guts to go through and like figure out how to share the different versions of my project in a YouTube video, that would be really fun. How do you outline your books? Do you already have a video on that? So, yes, I outline my books. I have a video that was one of my first videos about how I go about getting ready to write a book, my 3-step process, which honestly, ironically, hasn't changed that much since that video came out, I think a year ago. But I haven't done a video specifically on my outlining process, but part of that is because I don't necessarily outline. I create more like a bullet list. And I actually did it slightly differently for NaNoWriMo. I used a color code system so I could keep track of story beats. So, if I remember, I will have to add a link in the description to the video where I talked about how I did my outline for NaNoWriMo and that video about when I talked about my outlining for just in general. But yeah, I outline, but it's pretty simple as far as like, it's bullet points. But then I also now use headers to keep track of story beats for each of the different central characters. So let's see. That's hilarious. How do you outline? Okay, so I think I'm all caught up. So I think at this point, I'm going to wrap up the live stream. Thank you to everyone who's participated. I honestly am pleasantly surprised how many of y'all showed up. And to those of you who, I think there are some of you who weren't part of the chat, but I can see that I have some other people here too. So thank you for being here, even if you were not chatting. I see you were here. I don't know who all is here, but I see there are people here. So thank you, and don't forget, if you haven't already, to go check out my series where I go more in depth on how I publish this. I have more videos coming out in the next couple days, and then there's also the surprise video that's kind of part of this on I believe it's Tuesday that I'm planning to upload that. So thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time in the next video, and thank you for helping me celebrate Free and celebrate the release of Free. You guys have been so amazing and so supportive, and I guess I better get off now because otherwise I'll just go on and on and on about how amazing you guys are. Which, I mean, hey, you guys are pretty amazing. You show me so much love on YouTube and Instagram and whatnot. So, yes, thank you for being here. Thank you for participating in my live stream. Those of you that have made it this far, like, wow. I never watch a live stream for so long, so you're just, like, amazing. So I will see you guys next time in the next video. Thank you so much. God bless, and keep the faith to you as well. Is that really how you say that? God bless and keep the faith. I'll see you